The Truth About Vaccines is a riveting new docuseries that exposes the truth behind vaccines. Do vaccinations confer immunity? Are there natural options to vaccinations? What questions should you ask before you vaccinate? Were vaccines responsible for the decline in polio, smallpox, and pertussis? What about the flu shot and the HPV vaccine? Are they safe? Why do outbreaks occur mostly in vaccinated populations? There's so many questions around vaccines, and we need to expose the truth. That's why I'm inviting you to watch the brand new docuseries that is coming up in April, and you can attend for free. Go to learntruehealth.com/vaccines. That's learntruehealth.com/vaccines to enroll to watch the free screening of the revolutionary docuseries, The Truth About Vaccines. There's over 60 scientists and expert doctors in boosting the immune system and in understanding vaccines and how they work. They're here to teach us for free what we can do naturally to boost the immune system and fully understand the impact that vaccines have on our lives, on our bodies, and on our children. We need to expose this information for the sake of ourselves and our future. Go to learntruehealth.com/vaccines and sign up now so that you can get free access as the docuseries comes out in April. Because knowledge is power, watching this will help you and empower you and your family to make the best choices you can for your future. learntruehealth.com/vaccines. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 117. We are in for such a treat today. You know, before I hit record, we've had such a great conversation with Dr. Stephen and Janet Lewis. I am so excited for you guys to teach our wonderful listeners about chronic fatigue and how we can combat this. It's so elusive, you know. So many people are running around on empty, and they think it's normal, right? We think it's normal to be exhausted and need to pound back our quad shot latte in the morning just to function. And by 3 p.m. we need to run to the snack machine and get another coffee and get another, energy bar or something. And people are living on caffeine and sugar these days just to try to survive. And the brain fog kicks in, and then the weight issues and the lethargy. And then people start noticing other weird symptoms like their hair falling out or their hair thinning and or hormone issues. And if they go to an MD, they're going to be given a drug for each symptom, right? Instead of seeing the root cause. And so I'm so excited to have on the show these wonderful experts to help teach us what we can do to figure out if we do actually have chronic fatigue. And if we do have it, what we can do to bring balance back to the body and heal. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Awesome. Well, I'd love for you guys to start by sharing your story. What led you to want to help people heal their body and bring balance back to their body?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I very much admire the medical profession and some of the things that they can do, but even the medical doctors that I know and nurse practitioners, et cetera, they've kind of been pigeonholed and restricted in what they can do by the pharmaceutical companies / insurance companies. And America, we give about 4 times more medications than other nations on earth, and we give more diagnostic tests and more surgeries. But America's dead last in overall health, according to the World Health Organization and the Commonwealth Fund. So and I do believe we have the best medical profession in the world, I really do, but something's missing because we're so sick and tired and eating the SAD diet, as you mentioned earlier, standard American diet. I became a chiropractor because when I was a kid, my family took us to the chiropractor, and he would, do the nerve supply adjustment thing and the nutritional thing. And only when he said, well, you need a medical doctor, and you need both. We have so many people that come in, they're anti-medical. It's like, no, you need them. Sometimes you need them. Sometimes you need us, and many times you need both. But I'm just a big fan of everything. You know, I'd rather do it naturally because we have so many pesticides and plastics and phthalates and fire retardants, etc., that we're so toxic that you have to up the nutrient level beyond what you can eat. And I have this conversation daily. People say, well, I just want to know what to eat, and I eat a plant-based diet. Well, I'm not a vegetarian or vegan by any means, but I said, you know, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it does matter how good you eat. That does make a difference. But if you're not upping the nutritional level beyond what you can get out of your food, you'll never have the nutrition it takes to detoxify your body from the environment.
That is the first time I've heard it be put that way, and that makes so much sense. You know, supplements really changed my life about 6 years ago when I was struggling with my health my entire adult life, and so was my husband. And then we cleaned up our diet, and we had a little bit of a result. Like, we went completely organic about 8 years ago,
Right.
and shopped the perimeter of the store. We hadn't gone gluten-free or dairy, 100% dairy-free yet, but we had significantly decreased gluten and dairy in our diet. And what I noticed is right away I stopped getting sick. Like, I would get monthly, I'd get throat infections and sinus infections, or bronchial infections for a few years. And that, what I found out later, was a lowered immune system is sort of related to when you have chronic fatigue. And maybe either it's caused by chronic fatigue, or if it just happens to be sort of one of those things that if you have a nutrient deficiency, like, what's the root cause, right? If you have a nutrient deficiency, you get chronic fatigue and you get a lowered immune system, which makes sense. And
Right.
so when we started shopping the perimeter, eating more organic, I noticed right away my infections stopped happening. And now I didn't feel any better, really, but I wasn't getting sick all the time. And I went, wow, something's working. And it wasn't until I added really high quality supplements to our life that we started to see major shifts. And I came across so many people who said, you don't need supplements. I even came across religious people that were very angry about supplements. And they said, you know, God provided us with everything we need on this earth. And, you know, it doesn't make sense that we should take supplements because, you know, what you eat in your food is enough. And I did some research and some digging, and I found doctors like Dr. Joel Wallach that would say the soil is depleted of minerals because of our farming practices. And before 100 years ago, we used to put ashes in the soil from our hearth because we would cook with fire, and now we don't. So we're not remineralizing our soil. And that made sense. But how you put it is that in the last, if you think about it, 30 years, we've had a huge spike in all these chemicals that we're being exposed to, and yet we haven't increased the nutritional load to support the body in detoxifying this giant load of chemicals that we're now being exposed to. So what you said just makes so much sense.
Well, I like to tell stories, and sometimes I get in trouble. So, and this is a true story, and I've told it so many times. About a year ago, I got a call from an organic farmer, and I just love this guy. He's like a little brother to me because we just have this most exciting conversations. And he says, Dr. Lewis, I've been doing everything you've told me to do for 2 years, and I moved from New York to North Carolina, and I got first runner-up best organic farm within 1 year because your supplements made me have the energy to pull that off. He said, that's incredible, but I have to admit, I quit ordering your supplements 3 months ago. I said, I know who we ship to and who we don't. He says, well, since I stopped doing your supplements, I feel like blank. He says, why? Because I eat organic. I'm first runner-up best organic farm. And I said, did you read the book I told you to read 2 years ago? And he says, no. And I said, why not? And I said, I've got a new copy. I'm going to send it to you. Don't call me and waste my time until you've read the book. And again, this is like it's a really good, lighthearted conversation between this guy and me. And so he calls me in about 2 weeks, says, oh my God, polar bears have osteoporosis. Polar bears have thyroid problems. We're getting malaria from where they're spraying the mosquitoes in Africa. I mean, getting the DDT from where they're spraying, trying to eliminate malaria. And he says, da-da-da-da-da. I said, okay, I got it. You read the book. I said, that, sir, is why you have to supplement. You told me for 2 years you felt so good. And I said, that is what God intends us to feel like. And he says, well, I don't believe in God. I said, well, okay, that's a whole different subject. But I he's kind of like a little brother, so I chastise him a little bit. But you can't be everything in this world unless you're supplementing. And people say, but I don't believe it. God didn't make it. And I've heard that. I told one lady, I said, you're getting larger and larger, and your A1C, your 90-day blood sugar's going up, and you're gaining weight. I said, you're eating too much fruit. And she balled up her fist and came in and said, I don't believe that God made fruit. I said, yeah, well, he made uranium and cyanide and arsenic and tapeworms, but there's a lot of things like these toxins that you're ingesting and the fructose in the fruit that's not good for you. Well, monkeys eat it. I said, yeah, but they're swinging from the tree 20 hours a day. So, people have unrealistic ideas, and it's my job to try to help them think a little bit differently. And I still learn things every day too. I don't have all the answers, but we've helped a lot of people get back to health. We just this week got a picture from Little Rock. A young lady had her second doctor's nutrition baby, and that's after all the doctors said she couldn't have it. We have a beautiful little new doctor's nutrition baby up in Ohio. And then we have one down in Houston. And that lady called me and says, Dr. Lewis, I'm pregnant. I said, well, congratulations. She says, but it's a surprise. I said, wait a minute, wasn't that what we were working on? She says, yeah, but I didn't think we'd pull it off. She says, I'm 38. I said, congratulations. She just had a beautiful little baby too. So if you put the nutrient level in and every day detoxify, your body can work in ways that you forgot how good you could feel.
I love that. So you teach so many people about busting these myths. Do you have any more common myths around nutrition and supplements that our body's need for nutrition that you'd like to bring up right now?
You're opening up such a large can of worms. I think we're going to go fishing or something. Yeah. People tell me all day long, I talk to people all over the country and several foreign countries, and they say, but I'm taking this supplement, this supplement, this supplement. I said, well, your lab work says it's not working. But it says 5,000 IUs of vitamin D. I said, it's not working. And I said, some supplements are mediocre. They're not a bad thing to take, but they're not going to really blow you into a new reality of feeling good. Some supplements are like your crazy ex that is harmful and toxic to you. And that's really true. Some of them are really terrible. And then there's some that are pharmaceutical grade that are really strong enough to give your body enough to work with. So yeah, I hear that all the time. Well, my doctor says I don't need supplements. And I went to a cardiologist one time, thought I was having a heart attack, and he said, no, I wasn't. And it turned out it seems like it was just the toxins. It's methyl acrylates from dental work, which can cause sudden heart attacks, according to the research. He said, Dr. Lewis, why do you take all these supplements? I said, because it makes me healthier. He says, you can get everything you need out of your food. And I was being very polite to this man, but I said, well, if you think we're getting everything out of the food, why is everybody in your weight room 100 pounds overweight, 10 years younger than me, and look like they're 20 years older? Our food is terrible. Food's changed in the last 30 and 50 years. The average man's sperm count is down 50% in 50 years. Average little girls are developing their secondary sex characteristics many years before they should. And then it's causing all kinds of ovarian and uterine problems. And, if you want to talk about fatigue, we can certainly get into that because there's a lot of overlap. It's going to take you and Janet to keep me kind of organized and on track, I'm sure.
You ask him for stories, he has them.
Oh man, I'm loving it. I'm sure my listeners are too. Oh, I love it because I've often in the last 6 years felt like an island, very isolated when it came to being a cheerleader for nutraceuticals, and because it changed my life, and a few of my friends, I went screaming from the rooftops when it first changed my life. Like within just a few days of taking a multi-mineral supplement, I woke up with more energy than I had my entire adult life, and that was my turning point. And I was 5 4:30 in the morning, I jumped on top of my husband. And I said, I have energy. And he could not believe it, because I that was for years and years, that wasn't me. And within days of taking chromium, vanadium, aspartic acid, bitter melon, like this cinnamon bark, this whole, complex that helps,
Right.
regulate blood sugar.
Mhm.
Within days of taking it, my blood sugar stabilized to the point where I no longer had those hunger pains every 45 minutes. I mean, it was so quick. It was so fast without side effects. Whereas at one point, back before my health journey, when I was still indoctrinated into the mainstream medical system long ago, they put me on metformin. Metformin made me so sick. You Google the list of side effects, I had all of them. And I could not believe that this is how many people are on metformin, how many people are put on insulin, how many people are put on all these medications, and then you look at the side effects, and it's just this chain reaction, because they often then, after going back to their doctor with these side effects, are put on more medications to handle the side effects, which cause more side effects. And these doctors have gone through how many years of university, and they're doing like the dumbest thing possible, right? Like, well, you have these side effects, these new side effects just came up. Okay, well, here, let's 3 more medications. And I just can't believe how many people are on 18 medications, and they think it's normal.
Well, a lot of them, like you mentioned, metformin, when they come in here, they're like, I still don't feel good. I have chronic fatigue syndrome. They're on some sort of something to bring down their A1C, their sugar, but they don't teach them how to eat. And they just show them on the lab, well, your number's down some, so it must be okay to just keep eating whatever it was I was eating before and just take this medicine.
One of the major meetings of the American Diabetic Association, they serve donuts. It's like, you got to be kidding.
Oh, man.
I'll get nasty letters from the donut companies. But, you're talking about things that I think are not true. There's many of them. The way we're taught to eat, the food pyramid is kind of upside down, and they'll tell you to eat 6 to 11 servings of grain. And I have this friend. He's 10 years younger than me. He has a beer gut as big as my Toyota Tundra. And I told him, I said, you're going to have a heart attack because of this. And he was really, really tired. He says, no. And I said, you've got to quit eating grains. And he says, no, the United States Department of Agriculture says 6 to 11 servings of grain. And I said, Donald, when you had your calf in FFA, what did you feed your calf to make it fat? He said, grain. He says, oh, my God, you caught me. And about 3 weeks later, he was in the hospital with a heart incident. They're never attacks anymore. For us men, we don't have attacks. We have incidents. And his girlfriend called me and said, Dr. Lewis, I don't want you to tell him that I told you so. And I said, I'm going to rub his nose in it. I'm going to, and I still do. And he's 10 years younger than me, and he'll probably beat me to the grave by 20 years. I don't know. It's sad, but some people that want to listen and want an answer, to do something, to have something different, you have to do something different. But there's a bump in the road where, oh my God, this is uncomfortable because I have to do something different. I have to create a new habit, and even good change can be uncomfortable. So I try to put on my cheerleading outfit and, do the rah-rah sessions and talk to people and encourage them. But it takes courage, because what destroys your health? It's not the plastics and pesticides by itself. It's the fear and doubt that someone has that, oh my God, I took this supplement. Is it really going to work? Because Google said this. So fear and doubt, you have to go into the spiritual realm and create courage in order to get well.
That's so true. There's so much of our belief system that can influence our actions, right? And so if we have...
Yeah, you know what? You say belief systems, you know what the letters to that are? BS. That stands for bacon sandwich, by the way. Gluten-free bacon sandwich.
Nitrate-free bacon.
You talked about gluten. well, I did this huge podcast, another guy's podcast. He has about 120,000 listeners. And we got into this little bit of a spirited discussion about genetically modified wheat. And they were saying, well, that doesn't exist. And I gave all kinds of examples why I think there is genetically modified wheat. I know there is, but theoretically it's not being grown. But even if it's not genetically modified, there is 4 to 40 times more gluten than there was just a few decades ago. And gluten is the one that messes, with your GI tract and lays those little cilia down and puts scar tissue. So it's all glued up and you get leaky gut syndrome, and, it goes into depression and anxiety and diabetes and thyroid issues and infections and all these things that come out of the GI tract. But gluten is one of the biggest contributing factors to bad health.
Mm-hmm. I've seen it over and over again, and everyone I know that's gone 100% gluten-free has noticed an improvement. Those, although that didn't immediately go to still shop the aisles of the store and look for all the gluten-free alternatives, because you're just replacing it with something with more carbs, and so it's like we have to replace the gluten with something that's a whole foods. So if you need a replacement, go for organic brown rice and make sure you soak it for a day or two before you eat it. And but there's all kinds of healthier ways to replace the gluten, and but when I first went gluten-free, I'm like, okay, great. We're going to eat all the gluten-free bread we can get our hands on.
Mm-hmm. That's the first question people ask us. So what kind of bread can we have?
That's still a lot of carbs, and it did not help.
Okay, here comes another story then. I was treating this preacher of a very, very large church here, and he was a delightful man. And he comes in and he says, well, Doc, I feel way, way better. I have more energy, but I'm not losing weight. And I said, well, weight loss is a really difficult thing for most people because it may be low vitamin D, might be parasites like yeast. I mean, it can be toxins that your body doesn't want to let go of. It can be so many things. I said, well, have you gotten your carbs under 50 grams per day? He says, no. And that would include fruit. But he says, I said, you've got to cut your bread out. He says, well, what about Ezekiel bread? And I said, well, Pastor so-and-so, although I know it's the holy bread that Moses carried across the desert, it's still 14 grams of carbs per slice. So no.
And they were walking, which was the other part of that.
He got the analogy.
Right. And we'll walk across the desert for 40 years. We'll all be healthy.
That's right. You'd all be thin.
That's so true. Coming back to chronic fatigue, and I definitely want to have you guys back on the show. You have such a wealth of knowledge I'd love for you to share with my listeners. What, in your experience, is the underlying cause of chronic fatigue?
Well, you got into it. Sometimes the things in our diet will cause GI disturbances. You have acid reflux 95% of the time, not because you have too much acid, but because you have too little. You
have slow bowel movements.
Oh, let Janet tell her train story. She's famous for this.
That's where it all starts. Y'all talk about the gut and all that. That's where it starts. That's one of the first things that we ask people when we come in here when they tell us they're tired and just don't feel like doing anything. And I'll say, well, how many meals a day do you eat? Well, I eat 3. How many times a day do you have a bowel movement? Maybe once, or maybe once every 2 or 3 days. So I tell, well, if you had 3 trains that went through a tunnel, how many would you expect to see come out on the other side? And they're like, well, 3. And I said, well, if you're eliminating one of those meals, maybe a day, where are the rest of the trains? So the answer is that colon's getting bigger and bigger, which is all the toxic waste is getting in there that can't come through, and all of that leaches out to organs in the body. So the organs are not getting the nutrition that they need to be healthy. So that's one of the first things we do is start speeding up bowel motility. And one of the first things, we'll ask them is, do you have gas, bloating, belching? And if they do, it's generally because they're not breaking their foods down for them to pass them through or absorb the nutrients from it.
It's so important because the gut, like you said, it's where it all starts. If you don't have a healthy gut, then so much of our immune system is in and around our gut. And so there goes our immune system. It's the way we get nutrition, and to all of our 37.5 trillion cells, we need to deliver the groceries to the cells every day. And if we can't absorb it, digest it, break it down and absorb it, then we're not getting the nutrition to our cells. And then also the body eliminates all of its toxins, or most of its toxins, through the liver, that goes through the gallbladder, and the gallbladder releases it into the intestines. People that don't know anatomy haven't learned that the liver, which is just like filtering all the time all these toxins and breaking them down, then uses the gallbladder to release it into the intestines. But if our intestines are backed up, then we're going to start reabsorbing all of the toxins our liver works so hard to get rid of.
Which affects your mind, where you don't think like you should, or you're depressed.
Brain fog, we hear that every day. You talked about the liver, and you ask about chronic fatigue syndrome. Well, all these plastics and pesticides, phthalates, heavy metals, all that good stuff, they mimic estrogen, and the liver's responsible. I'm getting a little technical maybe, but it's the ones that have the highest 2-hydroxy to 16-hydroxy ratio, which is how the liver will twist or conjugate these estrogen mimicking pesticides and things, and it's excreted through the bile. But if you do not eliminate, like Janet's talking about, and you do not have the proper ratio of probiotics, and that is a tough thing to achieve, these probiotics in slow moving bowel, guess what? The bad bacteria take these 2-hydroxy estrogens, twist them back to the 16, reabsorb it, and guess what kind of cancer that causes? Ovarian, uterine, breast cancer, prostate, and testicular cancer. And you have to change these things, because I have people that are just so simple-minded, and that's not meant to be an insult. There was a young man that had one testicle cut off from testicular cancer, and his mother and daddy were begging me to convince him, well, when you're in your early 20s, you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof. He didn't want to do this program, and I explained the liver function, and he was extremely tired. And his mom and dad were standing at the door like, please, dear Lord, make this kid listen. He says, well, my doctor took out the testicle and says he hopes it doesn't come back. And I said, well, I hope it don't come back too. But faith without works is dead. I said, if you don't do something actively to change the environment that made it grow, you can just kiss that other one goodbye. And that's the term I used. And he said, oh, yes, sir, I'll do it. His energy came back. He went back to work, and he's an incredibly talented young man. And his mama gives me a huge hug every time she sees me. So, but you have to do something. You have to face your fears. You have to go beyond, oh, I had a bad day. That could be just your body methylating or getting out some of the toxins. It's complicated, but you just throw it in, it'll be blessed, and be consistent. Consistency is the key.
Wonderful. I'm so excited that you're here to share this with our listeners. So for those who think they might have chronic fatigue, what, besides fatigue and besides their possible slow bowel movements, what other symptoms would they be experiencing?
Okay. Acne, allergies, arthritis, atherosclerosis, birth defects, infertility, brittle nails, cancer, candida, chronic fatigue, fluid retention, gout, hair loss, and da-da-da-da-da. It goes on and on. If you're having a symptom, that is just your body having adaptive physiology. And that means, your body's adapted to the best of its ability to something that's not working correctly. It can be so far off, so it can be several steps off. It may be your thyroid. Well, if you have a thyroid problem, sooner or later you're going to have an adrenal problem.
Yeah, they tell you chronic fatigue syndrome means they really don't know where it is. So That's why when we evaluate someone, we use lab work, because we don't want to guess. We don't want to be like, try what Aunt Mary took down the road. It seemed to work for her.
Yeah, Geritol.
We don't have that approach, because we found people that have low iron. So many people have, when they go to the doctor, they'll get 1 to 3 panels of lab work maybe done, especially now with our new wonderful healthcare system. It's getting less lab they'll run. And people tell me all the time, we've checked my iron. I'm saying, how did you do that? Well, it's in the CBC, the basic little panel they run. They can see a part of that. And I'm okay. You can see a part of it. But when we run the stored iron or an iron panel, we find many times that people are anemic and don't know they are, or they have too high of iron, which causes them to have a heart attack or a stroke down the road that they didn't know, because
or stress your liver in a huge way.
They were storing all this iron for all this time, and they're like an old rusty gate hinge that just can't keep it moving anymore, but it makes them severely tired.
So one of the things we look at is, well, what are your total white blood cell count? What's the ratio on your neutrophils and lymphocytes, which are types of white blood cells? And if your neutrophils get smaller than your lymphocytes, that's usually a chronic virus, because chronic fatigue syndrome, if they have those upside down numbers, is almost always Epstein-Barr. And I took my lab. I was feeling pretty bad, but it's after a pretty major amount of trauma from a spider bite / surgery. And I had an immune system problem, and I took my upside down neutrophils and lymphocytes to my medical doctor, and he says, I don't see anything wrong with that. It's within normal limits. It's within the reference range. So that's another real good point I'd love to make. These reference ranges from a low number to a high number represent all the strange people that make the internet, and we laugh at them for being funny. That is a representation of what's common
on lab
in America, not what's normal or optimal for health. So those reference ranges, they change, and they're getting worse just because the nation's getting less and less healthy. So in range doesn't imply healthy. That just implies common.
Because there's many people walking around with viruses that the body's just learned to adapt to, and then they're very tired because they feel bad, or they have an autoimmune problem that's gone undiagnosed.
I love that you just made that point, because so many people say, well, my doctor says I'm healthy. And what we're really getting is just you're within a common range. And if you want to be one of the statistics, if you want to be the 1 in 3 people have diabetes, or the ever increasing rate of cancer and obesity, I mean, it's just absolutely if you look at the statistics of all the common diseases in the last 30 years, very few of them are going down.
Right. Well, they're
going up.
Right, and they're telling you, like, on a 3-month blood sugar now. When we were first practicing, when it became about a 5.8, they told you to be aware you were almost a diabetic. At a 6, you were. And then they moved it up to like a 6.4.
Well, they moved it to a 7 for a while. You weren't a diabetic till a 7. Then they moved it to.
Then it was a 6.5, and now it's like, well, you're diabetic now at about a 6.4. So it's like, I don't understand why. Well, I do understand why the insurance companies don't have to pay if these people aren't diabetic. So they keep pushing it up so that they're not anymore. But, that's when we look at lab, we're looking for the numbers to be optimal. And that's where you get health, because that's what's wrong. Even, thyroid numbers are, they run the TSH on someone and tell them that they got a great working thyroid. Well, they don't know what their thyroid's doing. That's a thyroid stimulating hormone, which is the brain getting a signal. That's not thyroid. And that range is like a 0.45 to a 4.5. So if they're anywhere in that range, they're telling them they're normal. And they're not optimal, but the free T3 is the big thing they need to be looking at. There's so many people with normal TSHs, but they have no free T3, and so they have chronic fatigue syndrome.
And their hair's falling out, and they're irritable toward their spouse. Was that nicely put?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
my husband's a saint for what he had to put up with when I had chronic fatigue. So yes, I can agree with that.
My husband is a saint also because which is, Dr. Lewis has always done nutrition, but because of my hysterectomy, when he first married me, he married me with a hysterectomy. I said, you've got to be out of your mind. You have no idea what you're marrying. I'm not here anymore.
I married Jesus' sister when I married Janet. She's so sweet all the time.
He literally was driving me around in a car and would go shopping for me because I could not get out of the car because I had no energy. I didn't know about the nutritional side of it to the degree that I do now, which I learned because of my illness. But I did what they told me to. I had the hysterectomy. They put me on the progesterone. What's the stuff they give you?
It loses your memory too.
See, the estrogen, Premarin.
I got the look.
Right, the cow urine, right?
Yes.
The horse urine, Premarin, the horse urine, right?
Yes. Well, I was rocking along great for about the first month. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, what's happened to me? And I started gaining weight. I started having no mind, and hair falling out, like you said. And I thought there's got to be another answer. So that's when we started realizing lab work, because the lab tells you what's going on. And we started really researching and finding out how to improve our health naturally. And so I have so many women that walk in here now and say, I'm thinking about getting a hysterectomy. What do you think? And I'm thinking,
we don't give medical advice, but
gosh,
based on her experience.
Please don't do it.
Unless there's a bad disease, sometimes they do a good thing. But, we talked a little bit about toxins and what can cause chronic fatigue syndrome and all these other things. Here's just excerpts from just a little bit of research. Organophosphates in pesticides, and that's from Journal of Nutrition and Environmental Medicine. Antibodies against plastics and office supplies have been isolated, which are formaldehyde, toluene, something else I can't pronounce, from American Journal of Industrial Medicine. MSG from New England Journal of Medicine. We've known MSG was nasty since 1974, but it's still in our food. High fructose corn syrup, which is full of mercury, but we give our kids stuff with high fructose corn syrup and wonder why they're ADD, ADHD, and have learning disabilities. And now they're renaming high fructose corn syrup to corn syrup. They're still hiding that junk, and it's messing with our children's brains. And cleaning agents, this is a good one. Cleaning agents used at night in offices trigger flu-like symptoms, fatigue, and malaise in workers in the morning. And that's from Journal of Occupational Medicine. And for the people that say, well, you can get everything you need out of your food, they're not reading their own research. So I want to show you how deep this goes. These nutrients are known to help those with chronic fatigue syndrome. B vitamins, that's from Journal of Neurology. Minerals, Journal of American Dietary Association. Tryptophan or 5-HTP, Journal of Rheumatology. Now, tryptophan or 5-HTP, if it's a good one, and again, all supplements are not the same. Some people come back and says, I don't know what he gave me a sample of, but it was a piece of God in a bottle. And I have women that put it in their husband's coffee and stir it up. I really do, seriously. Amino acids will help with chronic fatigue syndrome from Journal of Nutritional Medicine. CoQ10, essential fatty acids. Everybody needs essential fatty acids. And no, folks, flaxseed oil won't get it. It's not that that's a bad one, but it's easier to convert a good fish oil. And again, there are huge differences in quality of fish oil. Malic acid and magnesium for fibromyalgia, chlorella, which can clean up some of the nasty heavy metals just like cilantro does. But this research goes on and on and on. So anybody that says you don't need a supplement, they haven't read the research.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Now, you do these lab tests. Do you work with specific labs that aren't that are specifically designed to help figure out what we're lacking, or how did you decide on the labs that you choose to work with?
Well, some people want me to test all their vitamins and minerals, and I said, no, I used to do that. It's way too expensive and almost beyond useless, because if you do the B12 test, for example, and you're taking a cheap, not absorbable cyanocobalamin, which is still B12, it's going to test high on the lab. It doesn't mean it's getting into the cell. So what we do, we run the CBC, the CMP, but we run cortisol, which is, relative stress from your adrenal glands. We run your A1C, that's a 90 to 120-day blood sugar, because glucose is very variable. C-reactive protein, which is cardiovascular inflammation, because according to the Cleveland Clinic, they say that is a 4 times better indicator of future heart attack and stroke than your cholesterol numbers. And cholesterol is very, very, very controversial. And again, I don't make medical decisions. I'm a chiropractor, but people say, should I take my statin drug? I said, that's between you and your medical doctor, but read 1 or 2 or 3 of these books and then go talk to them about it. And I have MDs that buy my stuff to lower their cholesterol because it's natural. One comes in and he says, your reputation at the hospital is you can lower people's cholesterol without drugs. I said, I'm a chiropractor. I don't prescribe drugs. And yes, naturally you can do it, because cholesterol is part what you're eating, those inflammatory oils that they fry food in. But it's more about the thyroid function, the liver function, and the GI function.
I love it. I love it. And I would love to have you back to just discuss cholesterol alone. I think that is a topic that deserves an entire episode.
I could do that.
Oh, great.
We also have one called an NMR, that's an extensive cholesterol panel that not only, you can pick up some things from cholesterol, but particle size is another big part of it that determines whether or not you're more of a risk for a heart incident. And on the big cholesterol panel, it actually shows the particle sizes, whether they're small or large, because the small will fall through easier and do more sticking, which will make you have more of a heart risk. So we have the ability to get that also. And you ask about the labs. We generally use Quest across the United States, and in Texas we use LabCorp. So we're able to send people basically a few miles from their home to have lab drawn. But we have 12 panels of lab that are on ours, and not just the 2 to 3, but we also do it at cost so it doesn't break people.
Oh, that's wonderful. Very cool. Are there any other labs that you guys do that regular doctors don't do?
Well, vitamin D they pick up a lot of times. We do that as well. Then, like I said, we put ferritin on there for the stored iron. We run a urinalysis because many times people have urinary tract infections and don't even know they do, which makes them tired.
And there are some little bit more bizarre labs. People ask me about food allergy testing. I said, go to your allergist. They're best at that. And that's a pretty expensive test, best run through your insurance. There are some that are pretty far off the wall that I think are very, very useful. And I just hook the people up with that lab if they want to do that, like a stool analysis to see, what kind of yeast, fungus, and bacteria are there. And we do test them. We do believe that lab work takes a lot of the guesswork out. But I'm not one of these guys that want to test you to death. And some people just want testing, but they never want to treat. I'm more like, hey, let's see exactly where we need to go, and let's treat, because that is where the results come from.
Got it. Okay, so for those who know they have chronic fatigue, or especially after hearing all the symptoms you've mentioned, what steps should they take right now so that they can start to improve their health?
Go ahead.
Well, get help from your spouse, because you probably don't have the energy or the mental drive to do it. And I encourage people to be very polite and very helpful to their spouses, because that's the other half of you, usually the better half. And sometimes, Janet says I'm a saint. It's like, no. She was so sweet. It doesn't matter. And, once we kind of found the answer and she got that twinkle in her eye and the joy back, That's all I cared about. So, but
that's the other test. Hormones, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, and DHEA.
Or for us men, women just want weight loss and men just want testosterone. That's a pretty true analogy there. Most men have low testosterone, and it's because these estrogen mimicking chemicals. And it's not like you will see these infomercials on TV. If you do this colon cleanse, you will be young, rich, and good looking in 6 weeks. It's not like that. No, because your environment puts the toxins back in. So you have to be realistic and, sometimes patient. But
that's one of the first things we try to tell people because they're so used to taking a drug to mask a symptom. And when they come in here, I tell them with natural medicine, it takes a minimum of 3 months to start making changes, and then a month for every year you've had the problem.
Yes, I've heard that before, like an old naturopathic standard is that you just expect that once you start the treatment your body needs, it's every month of treatment for a year that you had the problem. And sometimes you end up experiencing the symptoms in reverse order that you developed them. So
right.
As you're getting healthier, sometimes people go through like a healing crisis where they begin to see those old symptoms, but it's like peeling the layers away as the body heals itself. Now, I have a listener that actually brought up this question. We have a free Facebook group, but you guys are welcome to join it. Just search Learn True Health in Facebook, and I'll add you to the group. And one of our wonderful listeners said, I'm trying to get my hormones under balance, and every time I add a supplement that supports hormones, I have the worst reactions. She becomes very grouchy and just flu-like symptoms, and she's just a total wreck. And she feels so hopeless because every time she adds a supplement that's supposed to support healthy hormones, she has a reaction to it. Do you see this in your practice when you get someone on supplements and they, instead of going the one way, they go the other way?
Yes. And that's why I said, you will have bad days and you have to have the courage to stick with it. That's a several pronged answer there. Sometimes people are so sensitive or they're full of fear, and their fear actually can help create that. And I'm not saying it's all in your head, but our spirit contributes to our body. And usually that's people that are just massively full of yeast and, they don't have that good liver function. You'd be surprised how many people have a clogged up liver from fatty liver, and that's the ones with the triglycerides that are too high. But the other thing is, when I started reading about the 5-MTHFR, it was easier to say the word than to remember the initials for a long time. I said, oh my God, I have that. And that has on Google, depending on where you Google it, it has a list of 64 or more diseases and or symptoms that it can cause or contribute to. So you know how men are. I thought, well, I think I have this 5-MTHFR problem, 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase, and half of us have that broken gene to different degrees. And I'm a man. Oh, if that's true, more is better. So I went on a huge dose of it, which is not smart, okay? So I went on it, and I felt horrible, grouchy, toxic. I felt like I was hungover and didn't drink anything for 5 days or so. And I thought, well, that's okay. My body's just methylating, which it hasn't been. And then on the 6th day, it was like Jesus parted the clouds and angels started singing because I finally caught up. And Janet can tell the day I don't take that one pill. And then later I had the genetic testing done, and it says, oh, yeah, you have, it's called a 677. That's the gene that it's on. But
that's probably the one thing you could tell people that have chronic fatigue syndrome. Do the genetic testing to find out if they have that SNP is what it's called, of the 5-MTHF, which is the 23andMe test that you can order that you probably see on TV.
And it causes, that SNP causes infertility too. So we'd talked about that and many other things. But, Yes, if you have that reaction, that's why you need to get your spouse on board, because they need to be gentle, they need to be loving, they need to wait on you hand and foot and give you massages at night, because it is tough.
Mm-hmm. And the massages will help bring down the stress, and
Yes.
that bringing down the stress hormone also will help the hormone levels, right?
Yes.
Because the more stress we have, the more the body robs the building blocks to make the sex hormones, to make the stress hormones. And it's amazing how the body works. It's like, okay, do you either want sex hormones or stress hormones? Because if you're not nutrifying, you're going to get one or the other.
You know,
that's good. I like that.
The other part of that is that, and we have them here. I don't know how they are where you live, but in Texas, there's one of these clinics on every corner where they're giving you these pellets, for hormone replacement, because everybody's hormones seem to be gone. So now they're giving you estrogen and testosterone and all that kind of good stuff. But the problem is, and why a lot of people feel bad doing that kind of stuff, is because they're actually bound up to start with. So when you're adding in an extra hormone, it may be that yours just needs to be unbound so that you can use them. We use a product called diindol methane, which is
and it's the good one, not the cheap one that doesn't work.
It's DIM for short, but it's got to be the patented DIM. It actually is it's cruciferous vegetables and truckload amounts like of broccoli, cauliflower. You couldn't eat enough of it to make up the capsule.
And that'll detoxify that. So I'd say to the listener that had that question, your detoxification pathways are not open. It takes a long time and a lot of concerted, very serious effort to get your probiotics growing in your GI tract and kicking out the probable yeast that's in there. And then there's a pathway called glucuronidation, and there's even medical doctors that treat cancer, and they will say, well, your glucuronidation pathway's not going. And they can test those things, and they put them on something called calcium D-glucarate. But the liver has many different ways to detoxify that 5-MTHFR I was talking about. That's the methylation pathway. And I've read, I read massive amounts of real research, not the Google distorted stuff. And there was two major cancer entities that said in all cases of cancer, there is hypomethylation, which means you cannot methylate to the degree that you should, meaning you can't get rid of the toxins. And then those toxins cause the cell division to alter. And the other big entity said in almost all cases of cancer, there's less methylation than normal. And that's just one pathway of detoxification. And then another huge entity says 80 to 90% of all of our cancers are caused from your diet and environment. And even if you're eating organic, you're still not getting enough nutrients, because it varies. You've got to supplement. And of course, this is my opinion. Other people say you shouldn't supplement, but I disagree.
We have a lady, we've been doing her lab for a few years now, and she came in the other day and had her lab run, and suddenly her thyroid was all messed up. And we've never given her anything for thyroid. And I said, what have you been doing? I said, your thyroid's all messed up. I said, you've been in some sort of chemical? And she goes, well, yeah, I did start cleaning at the church about 6 months ago. I'm cleaning the bathrooms for them, and I'm using Clorox. She said, I'm getting my hands in that. Would that have anything to do with it? And I said, yes, it had completely altered her thyroid function. So, and I tell
showed on lab too.
We tell people if you can smell it, it's in your system. You have to detoxify it.
You're not immune to toxins. Remember the polar bears that have enough toxins to alter their thyroid and increase osteoporosis in polar bears?
The scented candles that people burn in their homes, the things they're using on their floors to clean their floors with, and then they walk barefoot through it and pick it up through the soles of their feet. We see it change on lab when they do stuff like that.
Amazing. We had several episodes ago, I interviewed an expert in the toxicity in our homes and in our offices. And she has this test where it's like a box that you put in your home, and it filters through the air, and then you send it to a lab. And she looks at the lab and she can tell you what cleaning products and the brands of the cleaning products that you used, because
Right.
she's like, oh, well, this chemical and this chemical and this chemical soup is only in Clorox wipes. And she was off air. She was telling me, because she didn't want to get sued. Off air, she
Yeah, we
told me-
understand.
right? Off air, she was telling me the brands that are the most harmful, the most toxic, and my jaw was dropping because they were the most common that you'll find in households. And what she said is, I asked her, like, well, what can we do right now to start getting healthy? And she goes, do not have bottles stored in your house. Everything under your sink needs to go because they off gas. All the little
Yes.
bottles of shampoo and conditioner and all the cosmetics, our 100
Right.
bottles of cosmetics that we have as women, they're all off gassing right now. And your children and your pets and your everyone in your household is being exposed to it. Even if you're not even cleaning with it, it just happens to be in your house. She even said that having your car in the garage, because you start the engine every day, and that little small exhaust gets in your house, and even that gets picked up in lab tests. And that is so scary to think that we're being exposed to so much. But think back before unleaded gas, right? How many people were exposed to toxic levels of lead, and that was normal and that was fine, and no one knew that it was a problem, right?
And then these people would take calcium, and they don't realize, well, that's coming from cow bones that were grazing on the side of the road, ingesting the lead, and that calcium was extremely high in lead levels.
Amazing. So when it comes to all these supplements, because I know that quality matters. In fact, that there were studies done where they tested whether ginkgo biloba was actually in the supplements on the shelves, and they found that most of them were fillers and had very little,
Right.
if any, of the herbs. So people can take supplements. And like, I had an experience of taking a bunch of supplements from Trader Joe's, and I love Trader Joe's as a grocery store, but
Right.
I was just getting into natural stuff, and I was on a budget, and I thought I'll just start taking all Trader Joe's supplements. And I do also have the methylation issue, so taking the regular B vitamins that are unmethylated wasn't helping. But we get people who get their Flintstone vitamins or whatever from Walgreens. And then they don't have a good experience, or they don't have any experience, like Centrum, which, you can basically take a Centrum and your body can't digest it, and you end up, it goes through the other end of fully formed.
Yes.
And that's one a day, right? You only need one a day, but
Yeah,
your body doesn't absorb it. So then people go, well, these supplements don't work.
Right. Yeah. The one of those famous brands actually plugged the porta potties up because that was the common thing they found up in New York after they'd had a big convention or something there. They had some stopped up issues, and they saw some similar items that all seemed to be there, and it was that wonderful one pill a day thing still there.
Yeah, Centrum Silver, and you could tell it was a Centrum Silver because the writing on the pill was still there.
Right.
The body hadn't digested, absorbed it, or anything. So there's all these supplements out there, and there's no regulation, which I think is good, because the second you get into regulation, even though it's buyer beware basically, but the second you get into regulation, then the government could start messing with the good ones, right? So
I really have a different opinion there. The FDA checks a lot of things, and the FDA does a lot of good things, but they're just companies that may be paying somebody off. I'm not sure. They're companies that say, well, we'll make so much profit, we can afford the $1 million fine. Our stuff's regulated. We send it out, third-party testing. And I tell people, I said, if you're and there's a few people, this is only a few, but they'll say, well, how do I know? And, it's like, okay, you got a faith issue. I'm not the right man for you, because I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of patients that says, I don't know what you do, but I feel so good. I'm getting my wife, I'm sending my friends. I've already heard that several times today. But you got to find somebody you trust, because it goes back to the spiritual issue. If you don't have that trust and faith, you can take the best thing in the world, and your lack of faith, or that fear and doubt will negate the good that you're doing. But yeah, there are a lot more regulations than most people think, but they're going to use this as an excuse to regulate them out of existence, where you have to go pay your medical doctor $80 to see him, and he's going to say, okay, well, here's a prescription for vitamin C. So instead of costing you $14, it'll cost you $400 on insurance, and then you've got to go back and pay your doctor $80. You see the system that they're getting into, and our doctors are good people. I'm not knocking them. I just question the system that they're in. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there are definitely some decent brands out there, and some not so decent. Like, a real sweet patient came in. She said, well, I was on vacation and I ran out of your fish oil, so I went and bought this brand. And she says, what do you think? I said, well, I've not seen the assay on it, but it has 2/3 of the DHA and EPA in it versus mine. And mine was $35, and the one that was 2/3 the strength was $65. But yeah, the methylation, that's just one thing. On the subject of stress, anxiety, and depression that I don't guess you brought up. But
well, I think my listeners would be interested in that, and I know I am.
It's probably stressing her out listening to all this.
Lack of B vitamin is common. The cause of anemia, deficiency in B12 is a late finding. It's New England Journal of Medicine. Lack of thiamine makes the blood-brain barrier more leaky.
Ooh.
Thiamine is one of the ones that if you suspect you have yeast like crazy, they stop the thiamine enzyme from working, and you have to take a lot of that. And then all of a sudden, brain fog can go away. And that can be complicated too, but I've seen that. And thiamine's cheap. I think it's under $10. Lack of vitamin B causes psychosis. That's British Journal of Psychiatrists. Vitamin B is needed to convert the amino acid tryptophan to serotonin, the neurotransmitter, Journal of Psychosomatic Medicine. It goes on, talks about PMS and postpartum depression. But again, if you've got that genetic problem, the MTHFR, it can really, really be a problem. And when people take antibiotics, now antibiotics have saved millions of lives, okay? But most of the research says if you're lucky, it will take you 2 months to 2 years to get your GI tract re-inoculated with those good bacteria. And I have read one research that said if you took out all the genetically modified food, which is impossible here in America, and did massive amounts of probiotics and did everything perfectly, it would take you 9.7 years to fix your gut 50%. Your gut is the key to making you feel good mentally. And the probiotics, if you get really, really good ones and get them reestablished, they can make serotonin, they can make GABA, they can make dopamine. Those are all the happy hormones that make us feel good.
That's amazing. What you said about, you said so many things I'm fascinated by. Like, if someone was eating the healthiest diet they could eat, but not taking supplements, and if they were growing their own organic vegetables and in the most, nutrient-rich soils, but
right.
But if they had an overpopulation of yeast in their body, the yeast is preventing them from being able to have thiamine.
Yes.
And that's fascinating. So we really, it's so complex, but so that's another instance in which we need to take more thiamine than we can possibly get from our food just to compensate for the yeast, because we got to start somewhere, right? We got to get down the yeast, right. But we have to start somewhere. And I had Dr. Stephanie Seneff, who's a MIT research scientist, and her passion is about educating people on the dangers of glyphosate,
right,
which is Roundup for those who don't know, which is Monsanto's wonderful chemical that they love. Farmers have been spraying on increasingly more and more crops, actually. And
Yes.
And now it's been found, glyphosate is now found in some vaccines like the MMR vaccine, and found in other products because you put it on the food. We feed our animals, like cows, for example, filled with glyphosate. And then if they make, like you said, a calcium supplement or maybe a gelatin from the cow, then you are still ingesting glyphosate. And glyphosate inhibits the one of the very important gut bacteria to utilize molybdenum, which is a trace mineral of which it needs. And so that sets off the dysbiosis of the gut. And that's just one thing that glyphosate does to the body. And then it also will bind to heavy metals and release them in certain areas like the kidneys, which then causes kidney disease, and all sorts of wonderful things that now we're seeing this increase of. The more and more this is being sprayed on our food. My naturopath told me that on the other side of Washington State, where I'm on the West Coast and over the mountains on the East Coast, there's a lot of farming there, and she said when they do their spraying a certain time of year, birth defects go up significantly. And that just, I mean, just living near farmland, not people on the farm, just people in the town near the farm. If you're pregnant at a certain trimester during spraying season, you are significantly more likely to have a birth defect in your child, and a very detrimental one. And that is so sad that we're doing this to our own population.
And then the pregnant mothers are on a prenatal, which is most of the time synthetically made, so the molecule actually rotates the wrong direction and it can't be utilized. Janet and I got crop dusted in some Tunica, Mississippi one time, and Alexandria, Louisiana, and we were sick for 3 or 4 months. Of course, we turned on our detoxification pathways and, got clean from that. You really have to really crank up your nutrition. And I tell people, you don't have to trust me, although I'm pretty laid back and real easy to get to. But Joel Wallach did a really, really good job. You mentioned him, and he was a very good communicator. And we have some friends down on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and they have noticed out of this one particular county, and I'm not going to name it, they're having major amounts of ALS. And we have a friend down there dying of ALS in spite of taking all the supplements, which we think has made his life better and longer. But we don't know if it's the 2 or 3 counties up where they did atomic bomb testing underground. Yes, they did that. Nobody seems to know they did underground atomic bomb testing in the 1940s, and they're coming up here with uranium. They don't know if it's from the DuPont factory, or they don't know if it's from the surfactant from the BP oil spill that they've been using in the Gulf Coast. So who knows? So, yeah, all this stuff exists, and the lady that does all that glyphosate research is brilliant. I've read a lot of her stuff. We all have it. It's like I spend my money more on supplements and testing. I do some testing, though. I think the blood work's a pretty inexpensive way to start, and it's very thorough also. But the ALS is a scary thing, and we're seeing it. We've seen it firsthand, so it's really sad.
So for those who have been inspired by hearing you, which I know I have, now I imagine you take people from around the world. They don't have to travel to you. What does it look like to work with you and be a customer of yours or a patient of yours?
Well, because people kept asking for their friends and family across the United States, we started in Longview, Texas, in an office, and it's just grown. So we've learned to accommodate that by doing it across the internet. Basically, they pay us for the lab. We have a contract with with Quest and LabCorp to run low-cost lab work. And once they get the lab, then we can analyze it, which Dr. Lewis does for free. He goes over that. He uses his time as a ministry to help people get well so that they're not guessing at what's going on with their health.
That's hard to do because I'm pulled in 40 different directions, but we have a way to make it happen and without too much of a lag time.
Right. And then we tell them what supplements we would recommend based on the lab findings of what they need to get well. And then it's just, we just ask that they purchase our products because, like I said, everything is either no cost or very inexpensive. But we just don't like guessing and not, we don't want to be like the health food store on the corner that says, here, try some of this. We want to make sure we know what we're giving someone. So basically, we can do it anywhere. We ship the products across the United States. If it's over $75, we don't charge shipping. So we've got it pretty much where they can interact with us without meeting us in person, but they still kind of can. We have a Facebook group also. It's called Shooting Straight with Dr. Lewis, because if you can ever see his picture, he has a big Texas mustache.
Very beautiful mustache.
And boots. And he's written a book about thyroid, which is the Thyroid Sniper, because he likes guns also. So,
well, let me talk about that book. I said everything I needed to say in whatever it is, 36 or 38 pages. I said, these are the nutrient deficiencies. These are the things, the plastics and pesticides that interfere. This book says this, because all the thyroid books say conflicting things. And I was pretty concise with it. I said, you need a good medical doctor, a good chiropractor, a good naturopath that understands it and can treat it, whether it's medically or naturally. You need somebody to do it because you can't do it on your own. And I'm a big fan of Einstein, said you can't fix something with the same consciousness that was there when the problem was created. Mm-hmm. So get objective help. And I can't believe it. I'm pretty straight to the point guy. You can tell when you read that book, but it actually made bestseller on Amazon. It's like, oh, nice. Oh, great. I love it.
Congratulations. That's awesome. Very cool. Well, the links to everything that Dr. Stephen and Janet does and is doing is going to be in the show notes of today's podcast. So their website and their books and everything. So you can go to the show notes to get the links there. What about international listeners? I know I have a lot of listeners around the world. Can they work with you as well?
If they have lab, they can send it to us. The problem comes in trying to get the supplements across into another country.
Some of them it's strictly forbidden.
Yes.
We have a guy in London that pays a huge tariff to get them there. But he says, well, my biochemist wife says they're the best she's ever seen. And so he pays the huge tariff to get it into England. We got a lady in Egypt that says, oh, your iron's the only one that's ever worked and doesn't hurt my stomach and doesn't constipate me. And then we have a lady in Macedonia. And of course, we ship to Dubai and Afghanistan because of the soldiers, that kind of thing. Some of the oil workers and some of the soldiers can get it in. It depends on the country.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Excellent. So basically they should, listeners from around the world should just contact you and see how they can, if they can get the supplements in their region. I'm just a firm believer in high quality supplements because I've spent thousands of dollars on supplements that weren't high quality, and I learned the hard way. And I love that you guys have done the research. There's only a handful of companies that really produce the best, and so glad you guys have figured out exactly what works, and that's wonderful.
Well, the ones we use are sold to doctors only, but then we can sell them to the public, but they'll initially only sell it to a doctor. So that, because it is that strong, and they want to make sure they're not just going out for somebody to just grab.
Right, because it's unhealthy to do mega dosing or to do, you can take too much of the one thing that you actually didn't need to take and go in the wrong direction, right? So there's that balance. You want to make sure that you're going in the right direction, and I agree with you. I love your philosophy.
90% of the time, people come in here and tell us what's wrong with them, and then when we run their lab, they're not even close. It's completely something else they didn't have any idea it was. Wow. So we always tell people, if you want to find out what's going on and you want to get started, we have a health survey that's on our website also. That's probably the first thing we ask you to do is to fill that out. And Dr. Lewis calls you himself because he looks at each one of those to figure out what's best for you.
Amazing. Has he figured out how to clone himself?
I keep trying to make him work faster. I keep trying to figure out some way to get him you get them a little more speed going, talk faster, do something. And we're running out of time.
Well, and I am behind making my phone calls. That's true. I mean, it's busy, but we're blessed. And then there's a lot of people get blessed because of it. But
right.
It's problematic, but we work through that and people get well.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you guys are really here to help people and that you've sifted through all this information, and I'm excited to read your book. I'm going to go get it. That sounds fascinating. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time, especially because you have such a high demand, people wanting to get their health back. So thank you for coming on the show. I'd love to have you back. Let's tackle more of those great topics like cholesterol and thyroid, and how we can help the liver to detoxify. Definitely want to have you back for that. Is there anything you'd like to say to our listeners to end today's show?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you. You're very easy to talk to and communicate with. So I think the spirit of the show was driven by you.
Agreed.
I think that we would just ask that people have joy in their eyes, love in their heart, and laughter upon their lips, and have a good day in spite of it all.
Wonderful. I'm going to take that advice. It has been such a pleasure. And listeners, you can go to doctorsnutrition.org, or you can also go to the show notes of today's podcast and check out all the links there. Thank you so much. And I look forward to having you guys back on the show.
Okay, thank you for having us.
Enjoy what you heard today on your episode of the Learn True Health podcast. Did something move you, inspire you? Did you get great information that's going to change your life? Awesome. That's exactly what I'm here to do, is to help you gain your health back. Please turn around and share this. If this is something that's helped you in any way, share this with those you love. Love the Learn True Health podcast and want to support us? Awesome. You can go to takeyoursupplements.com and you can support us that way. You'll get access to amazing supplements that are just really great quality for a great price. And there'll be someone on the other end of the line to help you pick out your supplements that are right for you. That's takeyoursupplements.com. Or join our membership, learntruehealth.com/join. That's another great way to support our podcast, support our movement, and you'll be supporting yourself. Gain more information, wonderful videos, wonderful trainings, and you'll also be able to share those with those you love as well. So go to learntruehealth.com/join. Want something fun for free? Go to learntruehealth.com, and right there on the front page, you'll see where you can get our free cookbook. I spent a lot of time making it, and it was so much fun. It's really delicious, healthy recipes. And you can also get our 7-day doctor course. Right there, it's 7 days of naturopathic videos sent right to your inbox, and you can learn from top naturopaths on how to gain health naturally. So that's takeyoursupplements.com for wonderful supplements. learntruehealth.com/join to join our awesome membership, which is only open for a limited time. You can get our free healthy cookbook, and you can also get for free 7 days of wonderful naturopathic videos sent to you. Just go to learntruehealth.com and you'll see it right there on the front page. Thank you so much for being a listener, and thank you for sharing and helping others. Let's spread this information and turn this ripple into a tidal wave.